Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. Today's date is August 31st, 2021. And I saw this headline a couple of days ago in the Washington Post. Biden struggles to address the most acute crisis of his presidency. I thought, what is that about? So I clicked on it. Turned out he's just really constipated. All right, really though. I thought that this would have something to do with the pandemic. What do I know? Turned out it was about Afghanistan. But let's just talk about the pandemic for a second. It's a disaster, rapidly getting worse. Here's a chart. This is COVID-19 associated hospitalizations by age. As you can see, the hospitalizations are on par with before the vaccine rollout. And really, it's, this peak that we're in right now. It is similar to like March and April. It's also similar to the start of the pandemic. It's also similar to that last summer's peak. The only peak that it is not on par with is the big one from the winter. But it's really still early in the year. Yes, a lot of these hospitalizations are unvaccinated people. They're not entirely unvaccinated people, though. You can get a breakthrough case even if you have the vaccine. Get the shot. Definitely your risks from the shot for most people are going to be way lower than of getting COVID. People like to throw on that heart inflammation, the myocardial inflammation thing. Your odds of getting that are like 1 in 42,000. Okay? Your odds of getting something bad from an actual COVID infection are much, much worse. So get the shot as long as you don't have any health conditions which preclude you from getting the shot. Just ask your healthcare provider. So anyway, that's the only chart I'm going to show you. Let's get into this article about Afghanistan. President Biden on Thursday confronted the most acute crisis of his young presidency. That's kind of funny saying young just in the same sentence as President Biden. Anyway, the death of at least 13 Americans in Afghanistan that threatened to undermine his credentials as a seasoned global leader and a steady hand. In emotional comments at the White House, Biden made clear that the attack would not cause him to rethink his strategy. Rather, it said it reinforced his belief that the war must end and that the evacuation must proceed. He framed the deaths as the sacrifice of heroes performing a noble mission. It was not. And he suggested that any move to cut short the evacuation of Americans and their Afghan supporters would amount to caving to the terrorists. Quote, I bear responsibility for, fundamentally, all that has happened, Biden said, addressing the nation hours after the deadly attack. His voice broke as he invoked scripture, history, and personal loss to decry the double suicide bombing at the entrance to the Kabul airport, which stands as the last small acreage controlled by the U.S. in Afghanistan nearly 20 years after the war began. He promised to track down the killers responsible for the massacre. Just give it up. Anyway, I don't have too much else to add to this except that, 13 U.S. citizens died and then some like 90 or 100 Afghans. This is not the most acute crisis of his presidency, but these are the priorities over at the Washington Post. It's imperialism. We have kids in the ICU. We have states fighting against mask mandates. And this, according to the Washington Post, is the most acute. I mean, to Biden, it's like pandemic. What pandemic? They're not even talking about it. We're still in the grips of the pandemic. When they told people to go masks off, that was really bad, in my opinion. Keep wearing masks. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. It's like, get the shot, wear your mask, socially distance. But the enhanced pandemic unemployment benefits are running out next week. The eviction moratorium expiring. I don't know what else to say. It's like, I think that this is going to catch up real quick because winter's coming soon. Winter's in just a few months. And we know, well, look at that chart again. Look at what happened last winter. People go inside. COVID is airborne. Yes, splatter and droplets from your mouth. That's key. You want to wear the mask to try to contain those. But if you're inside breathing recycled air that's not filtered, you're, maybe running a risk. So like I said, get the shot. If anybody wants to know where they can get the shot, you can probably just put it in a web search with your state or your county and just COVID vaccine. You can probably find it that way. If anybody really needs help, we've helped at least one person in the comments before get connected with resources. There's probably something accessible to you, really, because they're not protecting people anymore in terms of public health measures. We're kind of on our own. That's why I got the shot. I got it back in May. And I was just like, well, people are going to go mask off and stuff. And I want to make sure I'm as protected as possible. This way, if you get the vaccine and then you get COVID, your odds are just much, much, much lower. The vaccines take some of the bite out of COVID. Your symptoms are probably going to be much milder. That said, don't be careless. Don't try to get COVID necessarily, because there is still a risk. Even with the vaccine, your risk is just much, much, much lower. It's something like you're 30 times safer with the vaccine than without it. So, yeah. Anyway, that, according to the Washington Post, is Biden's most acute crisis. I beg to differ. We have an ongoing slow motion disaster. Not even slow, it's medium motion. This is like pretty significant. The cases are just going up. And the deaths are climbing back up from COVID too. Again, a lot of that is people are not taking advantage of the vaccines, although there's still a good chunk of people who haven't gotten the vaccine, and it seems less related to hesitancy and kind of more related to access and accessibility, as well as just young people who maybe are from poorer families, not used to interfacing with the medical system at all, and just don't really have an in. It's not part of their life. Like, they just didn't grow up going to the doctor that much. And so, becoming a young adult, and it's like, well, I'm young and healthy. I don't even know, just going to get medical care like that may not be a normal routine thing. There's a lot of barriers to people getting it. We did a story a few days ago last week on the African-American segment of the population that is some of the most under-vaccinated right now. And, there's long-standing issues of trust, compounded with the poverty and accessibility and transportation issues and everything else. So the U.S. really needs to do a lot more. Europe, not that Europe is like the, global standard in public health, but Europe recently just cut the U.S. off of its approved safe list because, the pandemic, it's just, anyway, I would say that that's a more acute crisis. The housing market is an acute crisis. First of all, housing shouldn't be in a market format, but anyway, the way that it is now, it's just terrible, and they're not dropping prices. It's like there's a huge housing shortage. We have a homelessness crisis. Prices are just going up on housing. Anyway, rant off, and that's my video. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Thanks to the current patrons whose names are on the screen. If you'd like to support, patreon.com/socialismforall, or you can just help out with the usual like, share, subscribe, and comment. That really does help. Seriously, though, I don't even know what to do with this anymore. Meanwhile, you got people out there with the horse paste. It's like, get the fucking shot, People are just going out of their minds. Just, I don't know. It's like contrarianism run amok. There's a lot of layers to that. Anyway, more videos coming soon this week. Stay tuned for that. Thanks again, and we'll catch you in the next video.